We're not in cahoots.
And in the best country in the world, in towering Wall Street,
John Hess was a 12-year-old living in New York when Wall Street crashed in 1929. Today he works as a broadcaster and is still haunted by the memory of what followed in the wake of the crash.
They'll be telling us they tried to do something about the cost of medicine, the way they tried to do something about the cost of medical care. I grew up as a child in modest circumstances in what were known as the Roaring Twenties. That was the epoch of the flappers, the Charleston. Cocktails had been invented and were regarded as very classy. At that time, I recall delivering flowers, and I did glimpse the rich briefly. They were the ones who did not tip. People were supposed to have become very, very rich. It didn't trickle down to me. By the way, the phrase trickle down was popular among economists then. Everybody was going to be rich. And until one day they began to reassure us on the radio and tell us that, well, there had been a bump in the road.
That bump in the road turned out to be the Wall Street crash of October 24th, 1929. The greatest stock market crash ever.
As a child, I remember when the banks closed and people lined up in the streets waiting for trying to get their money and being turned away. There was a great boiling debate. There were hearings in Congress. What had happened? Where had all this money vanished? And who had gotten it? It was a mistake. Well, some of us thought that it had been stolen. And then, of course, it was unreal. I mean, who can imagine all that money? Who could imagine $1 million? I mean, it's not real. It's not real. It had gone away. It was a time of turbulence and confusion. The experience of the great crash is simply unforgettable. I was one of those who became rather desperately poor as a boy. I left town and traveled across the country looking for work.
I roamed and rambled, and I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts. And all
one day I made, I think, 20 cents working and never getting quite enough to eat.
when the sun comes
I think I would usually have 2 bowls of bean soup a day or something like that. And I can't face bean soup to this day.
this land was made.
An experience like that marks you. And I think that it was an experience, although I would not recommend it to anybody, that my fellow journalists lack. I mean, they can never understand the difference. Well, the feeling one has, or the empathy one has, about the poverty that afflicts half of mankind today, and that never can get out of my mind.
If this land was made for you and me,